Hey everyone, it's Oscar here bringing you another great episode of Life After Deportation, the podcast. In this podcast, we dive into the topic of life after deportation. So grab your headphones, turn it up, let's unwind together, and welcome to another episode of Life After Deportation. What's going on, YouTube fam? This is Oscar here once again with another great, beautiful episode of Life After Deportation, the podcast. Today's, guys, episode number 3 of the new series of podcasts. I want to let you guys know about a new episode, adopting to the new life changes, culture, food, a whole new way of life, from paying bills to transportation to work. So let's talk about all the new changes that come with deportation. Without further ado, welcome everybody and let's dive in. Now, without going into it, if you guys have not done so, I just want to make sure you guys know this podcast discusses what life is after deportation to spread hope and positivity for those who are being deported, have been deported, or will be deported. Okay, guys? Now, don't forget to like and subscribe. So, let's first things first, okay? I'm going to speak to you guys about my own experience, okay? Because there's nothing more real about basically just speaking from my own experience, from one experience, you know? Of course, everybody's opinions and experiences will be different, which I do invite you guys to, let us know your guys' experience in regards to deportation, okay? Now, one of the major things that I had to adapt to was currency, okay? Now, the exchange rate back in the day when I was deported, it was 13 pesos per dollar, more or less. As of to right now, on average, for example, it's 20 pesos per $1. What that translates to is basically for every $1 that you have, every US dollar that you have, you will be receiving 20 pesos. Okay. Now, this is more or less, it's not 100% accurate because the exchange rate does go up and down, But for this example, I'm going to be using it what it has been for quite some time, 20 pesos per $1. So, for example, say we go to a grocery store and we purchase a box of cereal for 100 pesos. Well, that would basically be $5. Okay, so that's one of the major things that I had a lot of trouble with because every corner basically had an exchange store. There's a number at the top and a number at the bottom. The number at the top usually is how much they will buy the dollar from you for, and usually the amount's a little lower. And the number at the bottom is how much they're gonna sell it to you for. I still have little problems here and there with it because I'm always trying to get the best buck for my buck. You know what I mean? My mortgage, I had to pay it in dollars, so I get paid in pesos. So unfortunately, I have to, go around the exchange store and try to get dollars at the best rate possible. As before, when we first got here, our rent was in pesos, and it was pretty easy paying rent in pesos, even though it looks a little more higher for me because for example, my rent was 5,000 pesos, for example, which is $250. So paying 5,000 pesos up front was a little bit more heavier than paying $250 because I was, raised in the U.S. currency, so I had a better idea what the dollar value was versus what the value of the peso was. So that's one of the things that you definitely have to, be considerate of adapting is into the currency. The next thing is that tripped me out a lot is getting paid, via payroll, which what they call it here is nomina, which is basically payroll. Back in the States, I never had a bank account because of the social security number, etc. Right? Here in Mexico, I was surprised because when I was working, all the empresas or the companies I was working with pay you through nomina, which is direct deposit. So they actually, most of the time, they open a bank account for you on your behalf so that you can get paid for, your work time. Some other employers do invite you to come over and bring your own bank, if you don't have, because, usually most employers will have a specific bank that they go with. For example, HSBC, Banorte, etc. Right? So, some companies will allow for you to bring your own payroll company along with a Mexican bank, but because I was new in Mexico, I never had a bank account before, so they were able to open up a new bank account, prior to me working, well, during the training session, but prior for me getting my first payroll check, they will basically pay me through direct deposit. So that was one of the great things, about getting paid, was actually getting a bank card. Instead of getting a physical check, having to go to the bank and cashing it, or find a check cashing store. That's how we used to do it in the States. We used to get paid cash under the table, but if we got a check, we had to go to a check cashing store, get taxed 15, 20% or more, you know what I mean, just for cashing that little check. But yeah, that's one of the great things that, that that came with the transition of getting paid through nomina instead of getting paid under the table. So, that was a plus. Getting legalized is always a plus. Now, another thing is new words. Why? Because most of us come from a background of, only English spoken, and Spanish is very, very used very seldom. So new words in Spanish, it's another thing that you're gonna be exposed to. New words, new communication, different ways of saying it. And as you conversate with different people, you will get the point, of how to say the proper words. But it comes all through experience. It comes through time. You know what I mean? So rest assured, by the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I've been corrected so many times, and I just take it in a positive way and be like, all right, cool, thanks for educating me. Kim, keep it moving. One other thing is transportation. One thing that TJ does have is a lot of taxis. And one thing I noticed is that everywhere you go, you will hear taxis honking at you. Not like in the States, you look for the taxi. Here the taxis are actually looking for the passengers. So they just go around honking, beep, 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 see who wants to, get in the taxi or whatnot. Those are the taxi libres, the ones that can, go where the route taxis cannot go to. Then you have your route taxis that basically go through a specific route. That was a major change for me, because coming from a city where we had buses, TJ does have buses as well, did have buses as well, a little more outdated than what, I was used to in the States compared to LA, what I mean, that type of buses. So, even to this day, the buses are still outdated, they keep it old school, 1980s, so cool, whatever. But, at the end of the day, that smog, it's crazy. But anyways, transportation itself, it's a little peculiar, because you have to know all routes. Well, majority of the routes lead to downtown TJ, and from downtown TJ, basically you have different bases that distribute through all different parts of Tijuana, way out there. Just all over TJ. So you have to learn your routes. You have to know more or less, be familiarized with the routes, where you go in the vicinities, because it's really easy to get lost. You know what I mean? Very, very easy to get lost. But yeah, transportation was, a major thing. Now, once we got the vehicle, but we got, we're able to get a chance, we're able to, move around and explore basically TJ within itself, and just get to know other places, get to know other bus routes, because when I first was here, I didn't always have a vehicle, but when my wife would come over, we'd just be driving around exploring town, and then that's how I would learn how to drive the taxi into different types of different places. So basically, getting out there, just enjoying yourself, and of course, being cautious. But anyways, moving on, guys. Another transitioning is paying bills. A lot of us paying bills, was motorized by applications, going to like a check cashing place, a liquor store, paying for bills like that. Here, Mexico, we have the same bills: water, electricity, internet. You know, so the electricity, one thing that I actually do like is electricity is actually once every 2 months. You know, and it's crazy because when you get your electricity bill, the whole neighborhood gets the electricity bill. You know what I mean? At the same time, it's like so. Your neighbor will know when you get your electricity bill, and you will know when your neighbor gets his electricity bill. So that's a trip. As opposed to the states, your electricity bills comes in private and it comes in an envelope to you. I mean, I never caught the electricity bill being due the same time as my neighbor was when I was in the states. But here in Mexico, all the bills are due at the same time. Which is crazy. Same goes with the water bill. The water bill, same thing. It's due. Well, actually, the water bill is due once a month, but it's due the same time as your neighbors. The whole colonia is due at the same time. The internet, it came down to the internet is basically two companies. Back in back in the days, though there's always a big monopoly with the internet, cable, phone lines. But anyways, the internet, it's each back in the days the areas were restricted to only one carrier. Now because of the whole technology with fiber optics, etc. Now we're exposed to different companies that we can hire for internet. Now, one thing that did trip me out here is gas. Okay, getting gas for your house. Why? Because in the states you get gas automatically through the gas lines. The built-in underground gas lines. Here in Mexico, you had to have your own gas tank, and that's one thing that I was tripped out. It's like you have to have your own gas tank, and you need to have your own hot water heater, boiler, your own hot water tank for your hot showers. And for opposed to the states, every apartment house, came with a boiler, mandatory. Here, every apartment house does not always come with a boiler, or does not always come with propane ready. You know what I mean? You have to bring your own gas tank and your own boiler. Bring your own gas tank. And so that's the thing that tripped me out a lot here is having to take a cold shower. Like for example, renting an apartment for your first time, and it doesn't have you don't have a gas tank, or you don't have a hot boiler, water boiler, and you're gonna be taking cold showers basically because you don't have those things. So that's one things that you have to get yourself a manita, a little gas tank, and get yourself a hot water boiler. That's a few things that you're gonna be needing. Now, adapting to new life changes, like I tell you guys, being in Mexico or coming back to your home country is a game changer for a lot of us. It truly is a game changer. Like I'm mentioned, from paying bills to transportation to the way of life to new job, etc. That's it's all a game changer for everybody. Now, as something as simple as grocery shopping, it's different. Why? Because you know I mean, it's something so simple as grocery shopping. It could become strange, because the currency be different, the prices, the labels on the products, instead of being in English, now you're looking at Spanish. So, and then the branding, some new brands that you've never seen before. So new exposure to things, simple things like grocery shopping, and going to the register and paying in pesos, and you're seeing your grocery bill being 2,000 pesos, 4,000 pesos, and you'd be like, wow, is that dollars? So it's, different decisions like that. It's that you're gonna be exposed to, that it's gonna come with the new life changes as you get to become a seasoned person, and become Mexican again, if you will. Now, some places, like I said, when you have your own place, they charge in dollars. Some places pay in pesos. Same thing with, the deposits. It just depends on the landlord itself. The contracts itself. Like when I first got my apartments here in TJ, a lot of apartments were just word of mouth. The majority of my apartments were just word of mouth. Like, hey, I need an apartment. We talked about the first month rent, deposit, etc. Those were always fixed. There was no negotiating there. But at the end of the day, a contract was just word of mouth, and then they would just do a little, mock up contract and be like 6 month contract, 1 year contract, just like in the States, you know. Um, but the background checks, like some companies in the States, realty companies do a background check. Here in Mexico, I guess it's getting gentrified now, so they are doing background checks and they're asking for co-signers. I've seen that now in higher areas where it's a little more exclusive. They're asking for background checks and they're asking for a co-signers when you rent an apartment or a house. So that's one of the things here that was a shocker for me, because paying in dollars while earning pesos was like going backwards, but it wasn't, because I was familiar with paying in dollars, but I was earning in pesos. You know what I mean? So it had a negative impact. It does. But at the end of the day, you get things done. One thing also that helped me out a lot too, adapting to the new life changes, is actually finding a church. You have a lot of churches out here with a lot of denominations, you know, and getting plugged into a church, it's easy. Well, I mean, I don't want to say it's easy. You just got to make yourself available, expose yourself, and just plugging yourself in. But finding the church, it's not that hard, in TJ, because there's so many. It's just totally up to you how you want to do it, and your choice of church. Now, one thing too that helped me a lot, especially with where you expend your most of your day with at work, with other peers, knowing that we have the same background, that we being deported, that we lived in the States, we basically get to know each other, get to know of your background, so we're basically home, far, far away from home, you know what I mean? So getting exposed, and getting 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 mixed in with other people, getting to talk to them, getting familiarized with their backgrounds, and you get to know new people from, different ways of life, where they come from and where they go after work. So you get to know a whole different new community. You get to make new friends, you know what I mean? You get to make new friends, new families, and a lot of us here, end up making their own families here. I had a lot of great friends that actually met their wives here. Now they have kids, you know what I mean? So they're building their future here, you know what I mean? So like I say, guys, there is life after deportation. There is a transition, you know what I mean? But there's nothing impossible. Like I say, guys, with God everything's possible, and he gives us enough mercy to carry on the day. Now, without further ado, guys, I want to appreciate you guys for listening to this great podcast. And I just want to ask you guys a few questions. I would like to know, tell me, you guys, about your guys' experience, how it was adapting to your new home country, whether it be Mexico, wherever you were from. How was it? How is it adapting to your, country? How's that experience for you? Now, also, I would like to know, tell me your opinion of the transition. Tell me how you went through it, the changes, the good and the bad. Um, Also, if you will, want to invite different questions, and ask guys, what future things you wish you guys have in Mexico. Like for me, it has to be the fast food. You know what I mean? I miss the fast food like Taco Bell, Jack in the Box. You know what I mean? Those are the type of things that we don't have in Mexico. You know. Also, we do have WalMarts, but it's not the same as the U.S. Walmart. You know what I mean? Yes, the same flow, the same aisles, etc., the same dynamic, but it's not the same. I would also like to see maybe like a Target. You know what I mean? But it is what it is. You know what I mean? What we can do now is just adapt, enjoy life, the new culture, enjoy the food, and just basically enjoy people and the new way of life. After deportation, guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed this beautiful episode, guys. Like, enjoy, and subscribe to this episode, guys. All right. So I'll see you guys in the next episode. Life After Deportation, the podcast. Let's go. If you'd like more information on how to contribute or would like to share your deportation story, please reach out via email to deportedintj@gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and to our other platforms like YouTube, so we can continue encouraging that there is life after deportation. Oh, in Jesus' name, let's go.